My guest on the Europe Conversation this week is Antonio Campinos, President of the European Patent Organisation. He says while Europe has lost competitiveness over the past 2 decades, there are opportunities in the United States, given current political tensions, where potentially talent could come back to Europe. Antonio Campinos, President of the European Patent Office, thank you very much for joining us on the Europe Conversation.
It's a pleasure and honor to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
Well, tell us a little bit about what the EPO does.
The European Patent Organization has a European DNA, but is an international organization. And when you look to the world, it's the sole international organization who provides substantive examination of patents. When you think that you have created a new technology, when you think that you have a new invention, you will seek for protection. And what the European Patent Office does is that it will check whether that technology that you forward to us and that you want to be protected as a patent is new compared to whatever has been invented or created by humanity. So patent literature, but also non-patent literature like scientific papers. If it has an inventive step, what is an inventive step? Is that that invention is not obvious for an expert in the field. And then you can apply that technology to industry. We have 39 member states. So we almost have all European countries. We go beyond the EU, obviously. We have member states like Turkey or Norway. We receive 200,000 applications per year. You would say 200,000, wow. 200,000, wow, yes. But if you compare to the US, that receives 600,000 applications. Or China, 1.5 million applications, you will see that 200,000. It's a good number, but still, there's a lot of technologies out there, potential technologies, potential inventions that are not converted into patents, which is the first step towards the commercialization.
Yeah, so, I mean, why is it that Europe has been losing competitiveness and is not competing with the likes of the United States and China? I mean, it's a really big problem for Europe right now.
Well, I think that in Europe, we had too much a legal approach to the matter. Patents is very much taught in your universities on a legal perspective. In the US, it's rather the contrary. It's very much linked to the technology. So the approach is totally different. That's the first thing. The second thing is that, of course, we struggle into bringing ideas into the market. And the patent is really at the middle road. We have like 700,000 scientific publications per year in Europe. To give you another comparison, the Americans would have 500,000. The Chinese, 900,000. But when you see then the patent application, you will see that we struggle to convert all this knowledge into successful commercial viable products.
And why is that? I mean, so we have these sort of ideas, but we're not able to translate it into the market.
Well, we have a different risk appetite than the US, for instance. The US do not fear to fail. Failing for the US is the first attempt to success. Here in Europe, we have this approach of when you fail, you are like almost marginal. So, and we applied that way of seeing the world to everything we do. So, for instance, if you want to invest in a new technology, you want to be reassured that it will be a success. But you never know. You don't know.
Exactly.
And
most
probably you're going to fail. Now what we need to do is, of course, like we discussed again on the Draghi report, I'd say that we're missing 800 billions to be a par with the Americans. But when you look at the structure of this investment, it's much more what we call seed capital, so early stage capital, when you are creating your startup. What we struggle is to scale up, to gain dimension. And then we need more funding. We need more risk appetite, because if you want to be sure that you're going to have a successful scaling up, I mean, maybe 1 in 100 startups created will be successful, will be one day a 1 billion startup, what we call a unicorn. So we need to invest more in the scaling up, and 2 more things. First, retaining our startups. It is estimated, I think, that 30%, it's on the Draghi report, 30% of our unicorns, so 1 billion euros startup, so to say, move their headquarters abroad, mostly to the US. So we need to retain them. You know, the Americans have a logo. They say, invented here, produced here.
Yeah.
So we need to start thinking the same way. What is invented in Europe needs to be produced in Europe. And now with the geopolitical tensions, we might even have a strategic opportunity to attract talent, attract researchers, attract talented, gifted people from the US to Europe.
But where do you think the EU can maybe seek opportunities given the political atmosphere at the moment?
As I said, I think that we need to rely more and more and more on ourselves. There's a limit to what we can rely on ourselves. For instance, we don't have raw materials. We have little raw materials, so we need to diversify to whom we buy the raw materials that we need to build the ships that are so important for the electric cars. So we need to look into ourselves, look into the single market, the internal market, and remove any administrative barrier that still exists when you want to import and export within the external market. And believe me, there's a lot of barrier. The first barrier is the lack of trust. So if, for instance, you want to develop a new technology and you need to apply for funding, for public funding to the IC, ESMEA, who are doing a terrific job, by the way. I mean, the number of formulas that you need to fill, the number of declarations you need to provide, it's like 20% of the time that you should be dedicated to investigation to filling form. We have to stop that. We need to cut the red tape. We need to simplify our legislation.
So the criticisms of the EU is constantly about red tape. I mean, regulations are important, but is it essentially that we're not matching the regulation with the innovation?
I mean, in a way, I think that it went too far.
Okay.
It tilts the balance in one side. For instance, if you take our competition law or competition rules, they are there to protect free competition, good thing. They are there to protect consumers, good thing. But tell me, how many tech giants we have in Europe? In the IT area, for instance. How many big providers of cloud services we have in Europe? So maybe the competition law should be when we compete within Europe. But we need to create the right incentives to create technological giants. If you look at the 50 most important companies in the world, Europeans, we have 4. And this is also because of the competition law. So we need to see where to apply this competition law. As I say, if it's within the single market, it's fine. But if you want to compete with the US and China, you need to have the right incentives and the right approach, concentration approach, in order to gain the same dimension that the Chinese and the Americans.
You know, one of the things I wanted to ask you about, because we mentioned the Mario Draghi report, he's calling for 800 billion euros a year investment. That is a moment. Do you believe that the EU is finally grabbing this opportunity? Because at the same time, he and President Macron have said that the European way of life is mortal and could die if we don't.
Absolutely. I totally agree with the statement. I mean, we have the most expensive social model. I mean, how many days of holidays you have? Oh, I have. Like 30.
Yeah.
I mean, in 15 years from now, I will have a pension. I have a social security coverage that is amazing. When you look at what the Americans have, they don't have even half of what we have. But we need to finance that. And to finance that, there's no other way to be more competitive. To gain competitive, you need to be innovative. To be innovative, you need technologies. And that will bring the increases in productivity that we need to finance these 800 billions, or maybe finance the Europe of space, of Europe of defense. We need to be more productive.
But are we there? That's what I'm asking.
No, we're not there. We lost productivity. That's why we lost productivity when we compare ourselves to the Americans and to the US. We lost productivity in the past 20 years. Yes.
And why did we do that? And how can we get this back?
We need to focus on gaining efficiency gains in our traditional industry. And we need to promote more and more disruptive technologies that will bring these increases in productivity, such as AI. Who doesn't use an AI model? I won't make no advertising. I'll make no advertising for specific AI models. But the AI models are bringing a revolution in our lives, bringing tremendous increase in productivity. But they need to spread. They need to touch all industries.
I want to bring you back to the political situation that we're in now with the United States. What do you think the implications of this trade war will be for Europe, of course, in terms of the economies, but also the dissolution in some way of the sort of Western alliance, transatlantic alliance?
Well, I mean, tariffs are not good for trade. and not good for the European trade, but they're not good for the American trade. In the meantime, we need to rely on ourselves. We need to diversify our supply chains, and we need to look more, maybe look more, expand our free trade agreements with natural partners. I would say Canada, for instance, Mexico, so north of US, south of US, and obviously China.
And what do you think the opportunities lie? Do you believe that maybe the innovation can come this way amid an insecure United States?
I mean, there's no alternative. I mean, he said that, I don't know how you say this in English, but the necessity brings ingenuity. And we're in deep need. We are in deep need. We're in deep need. So humankind is never as creative as when he is in need. And we are in need. The sense of urgency is there. So I think that, I mean, this is more than a wake-up call. This is a different world in which we have entered. And we are strong in Europe. We are still a big economic powerhouse. And the only thing is that we need to diversify. We can't rely now exclusively in the US to protect us or to trade with us. We need to diversify our partnerships.
Okay, just final question then. Are you optimistic about the next 5 years amid everything that we've talked about today? Global political instability, concerns around EU competitiveness and innovation. Are you optimistic?
I think, to be honest, it's not a matter of being optimistic or not optimistic. The matter is that we will be somewhere in 5 years from now. And if we have noticed that something very wrong happened and will not happen. Europe has a strong history. Europe will be there in 5 years from now. We have a longer history than the Americans, I think.
Okay.
By my own calculations.
Antonio Campinos,
President
so of the European Patent Organization. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. Thank you.